Okay, so today is Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. This is the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. The topic really today is Bitcoin. And you know what? A buddy of mine asked me, hey man, why is Bitcoin going up? Well, there could be a number of different hypotheses as to why it's going up. Ultimately, from the perspective of Stronghold Digital Mining, from my personal perspective, it doesn't really matter why it's going up. Okay, it's good that it's going up. I just did a quick spot check of hash prices. They're just under 8 cents, like 7.9 cents. That is phenomenal. I mean, if we were to have a Q4 2023 where hash prices hovered between, say, 7 cents and maybe 8 cents, that would be phenomenal for Stronghold Digital Mining and no doubt for other companies within the publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem. Bitcoin going up in price is kind of remarkable because, just yesterday it had surpassed $31,000 per coin. At one point, it got to $35,000 per coin. And this is just within less than 24 hours. So clearly something is happening. So, for example, I'm not a geologist, nor am I a volcanologist, but it's my understanding that before a volcano really has a massive eruption, there oftentimes are a lot of tremors that can be felt, right? So they'll use seismic, measuring equipment, right? I think they're called seismographs. Don't quote me on that. And I believe that type of equipment, right, will show, that little line that you see, the little squiggly marks. And it tells scientists, hey, something's happening. Something's moving, right? Something's going on here. That's also true before an earthquake. So what we're seeing in the price of Bitcoin, from my perspective, represents the wiggles of those lines. Something is starting to move. Something is starting to happen. Something is potentially starting to break. And it's breaking on the side of, right, Bitcoin prices going up. So, hey, I ultimately am not, as I've said before, I'm not wishing for some sort of financial problem or crisis here in the United States. I'm really not, but to the extent that a crisis is presented, to the marketplace, if we're going to see Bitcoin respond in a positive manner to that, well, arguably that then means Bitcoin is presumably starting to live into its full potential as a store of value, right? As a safe haven. Similar to gold, right? But the massive differentiating factor being that, it's kind of tough to lug around a bunch of gold, not as hard to lug around a bunch of Bitcoin, given the fact there's nothing to lug around, right? It's all digital. Now, all of that being said, I don't want to get into the merits of Bitcoin versus gold, because you know what? Ultimately, that's a discussion perhaps for another day. What we care about most, right? From the perspective as those of us who co-own Stronghold Digital Mining, those of us who are shareholders of this business, what really, really matters is that we start to see the price of Bitcoin go up. And as a result of that, a nice sort of bonus is to see hash prices begin to dramatically improve. So, as I've said, right, the price of Bitcoin going up, that begins to potentially change market sentiment, right? Market participants start looking at the marketplace, right? They're like, hey, wait, Bitcoin is starting to move up. I'm starting to get interested in Bitcoin again. And, I've said this before. Hey, look, if Bitcoin hits $100,000 a coin, trust me, there are a lot of people that may have been kind of indifferent about Bitcoin. Suddenly they're going to be very interested in Bitcoin. Okay, and there's going to be a percentage of those people that are interested in approaching this from the perspective of an investment in a Bitcoin mining company. And ultimately, bear this in mind too, it doesn't ultimately kind of matter, right? What somebody may or may not think of Stronghold Digital Mining. If the price of Bitcoin by itself goes up for whatever reason, and we see hash prices that are kind of attractive, that's going to really, really benefit this company tremendously. Okay, the amount of leverage that Stronghold Digital Mining has to hash price is astronomical. So if we were to start seeing some significant moves in hash price, which we've already begun to see to some degree, it's going to be transformative, potentially transformative for this business, for this company. So last year, 2022, fourth quarter 2022, the big event that really made the quarter, was Winter Storm Elliott. As I said at the time, that storm came at a tremendous human cost. And so I would never in a million years sit around saying, hey man, I hope we get another significant snowstorm that's going to devastate regions of this country. hey, look, we don't have any control over the weather. So ultimately, if something like that happens, it happens. But I'm not going to sit around and wish for it. Likewise, right? When it comes to the price of Bitcoin going up, perhaps because we're going to start to see an implosion in the US dollar, or we're going to start to see, banks really, struggling, right? And we're going to perhaps see more outward signs of a financial crisis. Again, it's not something I'm really hoping for at all. I'm really not. But if it happens, again, we have no control over it. I don't control that. I'm sure you don't either, right? But if it happens, and to the extent Bitcoin is a beneficiary of that, and then by extension, with Bitcoin being a beneficiary, Bitcoin, right, the price of Bitcoin going up, if we see hash prices that are generally pretty positive, like from a dollars and cents perspective, Stronghold Digital Mining is going to benefit tremendously. Just by way of the price of Bitcoin going up, it dramatically changes the sentiment. Look, you've seen it, right? You could feel it. I can feel it. Do you sense it in the market that suddenly now Bitcoin is like this thing again, right? People are talking about it more. It's kind of becoming more exciting to be, right, to talk about it, to look at it, to watch it, to perhaps invest in it, right? People are starting to slowly but surely regain an interest in Bitcoin. Now, where was this interest, say, around this time last year? Say November, December of 2022, when Bitcoin was what, 15,000 a coin, 17,000 a coin? I mean, it was the same Bitcoin, right? It's not like the technology changed. It's not like the fundamentals of Bitcoin changed. It's just that the marketplace sentiment changed, right? FTX had just blown up. You had a lot of bankruptcies, right, hitting not only the publicly traded Bitcoin mining sector, right? A couple of companies busted out. But you had also a lot of exchanges and, quasi-exchanges going bankrupt. So the entire, the entire mood sort of darkened. And everybody became kind of pessimistic and, kind of hopeless, right, about Bitcoin and about what it had the potential to achieve. But now things are changing, right? You could sense it. The marketplace is slowly but surely starting to cycle again. The potential exists that there will be a spot Bitcoin ETF. I think ostensibly that's been the big news, driving the price of Bitcoin at least the last 24, 48, 72 hours. If that comes to pass, that'll likely be a very positive thing for the price of Bitcoin. And again, anything that's good for the price of Bitcoin, leaving hash prices aside, it's just good for market sentiment. Okay? And that benefits Stronghold Digital Mining. And our shares, I've noticed, have been up above $5, a little bit below now. It's, again, our stock should really be around $10, $11, $12, $13 a share, from my perspective. I mean, come on, like bare minimum. Truth is, I think H.C. Wainwright still has a price target of $20. $20. Okay, this is a professional, Wall Street investment firm. Their analyst that covers, right? Stronghold Digital Mining, I believe, you could double check me on this, right? $20 is the stock price target. At least it was a couple of months ago. I see no reason why it would have changed. So remember slide 8 in the most recent investor presentation that Stronghold Digital Mining put together? It talked about how, like, compared to our peers, we were trading at a pretty crazy discount. And when you do the math, it's like we really should be trading at closer to like $21 a share. And that's based on like a slide that Stronghold Digital Mining put together, and then I sort of extrapolated what the stock price would be. I think I computed around $20, $21, and that kind of correlates with what H.C. Wainwright has as a stock price target for the company. And what are we trading at? $4 or $5 a share? So, regardless of anything, this company's stock has a long way to go to catch up, okay? To the extent it's going to take a real bull in the bull run in the price of Bitcoin for that to happen, so be it, right? I'm not going to complain about that. But I think even if Bitcoin were to stay where it's at right now, with hash prices right around like 8 cents, that's phenomenal for Stronghold Digital Mining. To the extent we can have a Q4 2023 where the real driver here is going to be Bitcoin, so be it. The really lovely thing about Stronghold Digital Mining is that all of our, waste coal reclamation activities, which benefit tremendously from our involvement in Bitcoin, because it helps keep operations going, right? But those operations also are more than capable of generating the electricity that they already generate and sending it to the PJM grid. Despite what you may read in the media, right, that alleges we just use all the electricity ourselves to mine Bitcoin, and we just sort of like blind ourselves to grid prices, we blind ourselves to the community, we blind ourselves to the directives of PJM, which is our local grid operator, right? despite all of those insinuations, which aren't true, they're completely false. I mean, I think Stronghold Digital Mining, even recently, right? They said, hey, we're going to follow a PJM directive not to, import more than 10 or 20 megawatts of electricity to Scrubgrass due to like some power line upgrades that were taking place in that area. So, again, this idea that Stronghold Digital Mining exists solely to serve itself, doesn't send any electricity out into the grid, it's just all used to mine Bitcoin, is false. So, as we go into Q4, to the extent, right, in late November, December, I already saw like in the western part of the United States, there's like a snowstorm, that's already kind of happening. Hey, if we start to see it's not like we control the weather. If we start to see some weather here on the East Coast that drives up grid prices, again, the option exists. Hey, what does it make most economic sense to do with the electricity we're generating, right? Do we mine Bitcoin? Or do we sell that electricity to the grid? Either way, the big beneficiary is arguably the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, right? In the sense that, hey, all of us who live in this state, I realize you may not live here, but just hear me out for a second. Those of us who live here in the state, we benefit tremendously from the environmental work that Stronghold Digital Mining is doing by cleaning up, right, waste coal piles, of course, are more like mountains, right, which are like Superfund sites, essentially. So it's a really big problem. So, to the extent we can keep that going, which I think is really, really important and really, really, unquestionably, this should not be controversial. I think it's unquestionably good work that the company does on the environmental front, right? That's the reason why these purpose-built facilities were created in the first place. They weren't created to mine Bitcoin, right? They were created to reclaim land. But you got to do that in an economically viable manner. And to the extent selling electricity to the grid sometimes isn't economically viable, it sure is nice to have an alternative, which nowadays is Bitcoin. So listen, from my perspective, we're heading in the right path here. It looks like we'll have some optionality going into Q4. Hey, do we keep mining Bitcoin? If so, great. Hash prices look good. But you know what? If the grid decides to, say, hey, we got, grid prices are going to go up because of bad weather that's coming to the area, Stronghold Digital Mining, just as they did last year, will be there to say, hey, let's supply the grid with electricity that's needed. We'll shut down the data centers, and that'll make them, the most sense of what to do with our electricity. People might say, hey, but it sounds like the company's doing what makes the most economic sense, and so like these decisions are being driven by money. Well, guess what? We live in a world that's driven by money, right? Everything is driven by money. This isn't a charity. The last time I checked, we're not a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We need to generate money, right? We're not, this is the kind of thing where we need to pay our own way. Okay. It's not like there's some benefactor, cutting blank checks every quarter to keep us in business. We got to try, we're trying to figure this out on our own, right? Yes, there are some tax credits that are made available to all waste coal reclamation facilities here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, right? And certainly Stronghold Digital Mining takes advantage of those because they're there for a purpose. They're there to help these purpose-built facilities do what they're doing. This should not be controversial in any event. Bitcoin is doing well. Let's hope it continues to do well, right? Because ultimately that benefits Stronghold Digital Mining. Okay, with all of that said, have a great rest of the day. Let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again tomorrow.